Welcome into the Thursday edition. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ian Safar here with you on this Thursday morning. Joe Rexrode, how we doing? What's going on?
Doing okay. Disappointed in my Dubs for not taking this seriously. So now they're going to mess around and have no rest, even if they do win. Meanwhile, apparently J.J. Redick stormed off last night. Apparently he played the same five guys the entire second half. Was asked if he leans on any assistants to help him with rotations, and he got. I mean, it's an interest. I've never heard of that before. Have you ever heard of that before?
I have not.
The same five guys playing all 24 minutes in the second half of an NBA playoff game?
No. Never heard it.
But, I mean, how could we possibly question the great J.J. Redick? I mean, he's a genius. Just ask him.
A demonstrated great coach.
Who loves himself more, J.J. Redick or Sean Payton?
Man, that's a good question.
One of them's actually done something.
I think I'll go Redick. I don't know. I'll go Payton. But at least he's done something.
I'll go Payton, too, but Redick's more of a jerk in his self-love / deflection, anger displacement.
And he's not done anything yet, so there's also.
I mean, he did a pretty good job this year, but yeah, bye Lakers.
One and done for the Lakers. I mean, I believe this is LeBron's. I think I heard the Unsportsmanlike crew talking about this. This is his 7th year. They won a championship. They've been to a Western Conference final, and other than that, I think they've been out in the first round 3 times and missed the playoffs twice. So, like, all in all, it's really, would many franchises around the league take that? Of course they would.
Yeah.
The Lakers, really, probably not what they were looking for from the LeBron experience.
He also did not answer, or he just said, I basically didn't have an answer on how much longer he's going to play.
Right.
You got to think that he'd like to take another run with Luka and see if they can add a front court
You would
person,
think.
right?
You would think. We'll see how that goes, but they're one and done again. We'll see if your Dubs can hold on in this series and get it done.
It's all tomorrow night, man.
We'll see how that goes. Ian Safar, how we doing? What's going on?
Doing great. Thanks. A couple series clinchers last night, a little in the NHL as well. So playoffs are in full force.
Yeah, those Lightning didn't come through for you there,
brutal
Robby.
call by me. Like, that Stanley Cup final of Colorado Tampa Bay is looking real good right now.
It's an awesome pick in 2022.
Yeah, it's looking real good right now. Real good stuff. Great call by me picking against the Florida Panthers.
I like the retro
virtually
pick.
Unbeatable the last 2 years.
I know. I might have to
say,
redact my. They're not going to make it back to the final.
Yeah.
Florida.
They look better than they ever have.
Yeah, they might clear the East, no problem. Well, Carolina looks good too, but
they do. But man, those Panthers are good. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that works out. Good call by me for the Lightning taking them down. Panthers win that series in 5 games. Winnipeg wins last night, so they're up 3-2 on St. Louis, and the Washington Capitals close out Montreal. So there's the latest in the NHL last night. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Alex Doherty from the Tennessean will be with us coming up at 6:30. We'll get into the Predators, Barry Trotz. There is now a time. We know when Barry Trotz is speaking, which we'll get into that coming up here in just a few minutes. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports will be with us at 8 o'clock as well. We'll get into the Titans, the NFL draft, all things NFL with Charles. So looking forward to that. Joe, speaking of the NFL, the punishment has been doled out from the NFL to the Atlanta Falcons and defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich from their prank, his son's prank call to Shedeur Sanders that made all the headlines over the weekend. The NFL fined the Falcons $250,000, and Jeff Ulbrich got fined $100,000 over leaking the phone number of Shedeur Sanders before the 2025 NFL draft. And as we talked about earlier this week, Jeff Ulbrich's son got a hold of the number, called Shedeur Sanders, acted like he was Mickey Loomis from the Saints, and was getting ready to take him in the draft. And then obviously he did not, and played that off. And that video got out there, and that made the rounds. That was 21-year-old Jax Ulbrich. And Jeff Ulbrich spoke about this and was asked about just the entire situation and offered his apology to the Shedeur Sanders camp and the Sanders family yesterday.
I'd like to publicly apologize to Shedeur and the Sanders family for what occurred. Second of all, I want to publicly apologize to Mr. Blaine, Terry Fontenot, Reed Morris, the entire Falcons organization. My actions of not protecting confidential data were inexcusable. My son's actions were absolutely inexcusable. And for that, we are both deeply sorry. The NFL has taken action, and I fully respect the punishment. We take full responsibility, my son and myself, and we will not be appealing the fine in any way.
So that was Jeff Ulbrich yesterday, Joe. $250K to the Falcons, and Jeff Ulbrich gets fined $100,000. A very expensive prank call from his son.
So now let me put myself back at age 21 and imagine that I cost my dad $100K and he worked for the Army, but the U.S. government, $250,000. How many freaking lawns would I be mowing,
dude?
But it would be like with a non, those old Leave It to Beaver non-motorized mowers, yeah.
Son, you're gonna get out there with scissors and you're gonna cut grass.
How many bathrooms would I clean? How many toilets would I clean with a toothbrush for a summer? My goodness. I mean, did he talk at all about how grounded his kid is? I want to hear the terms of the grounding. Okay. Good Lord. And by the way, I saw Mike Florio talking about this. This is also some dumb NFL stuff here. So let's make sure that the Ole Miss frat boys who had the fun at Shedeur's expense get their, blame. But so Abdul Carter, Mason Graham, Tyler Warren, Kyle McCord, and Chase Lunt also got prank calls of some sort. So what is the NFL doing here? Hey, everybody, we're going to give everybody secret phones. And then, hey, we're going to send an email out to everyone in the world with the numbers. That should go well.
There's got to be a better way to do this. Like I saw Charles tweet about this yesterday. We can get into this a little bit more with him later, obviously, in the show here. But, Charles put it out there yesterday. He's like, there are better ways to do this. He said, fixing the NFL prank call issue. You can hold all the prospects' numbers in-house, and teams can call the league's dedicated switchboard. An operator patches them through to the player, or you can simply make all the calls streaming on video so players see who they're speaking with. There you go. Charles has figured it out.
Wow. You've really put a lot of thought into this, Charles.
I know. The switchboard.
Switchboard. Okay, I'll connect you now. Charles. Showing your age, Charles. T-Bone says, my son.
The operator. Is the operator there?
I got a collect call from a Mr. Loomis. My son would be my personal assistant for life, says T-Bone. Yeah. Like be your butler. Like that's what he should just have his son have to drive him to work every day. There you go.
Yeah. $250K for the Falcons and $100,000 for Jeff Ulbrich.
Yeah, Dustin says they could fire. I don't think the Falcons have already said they're not taking any more action against. I mean, it's an honest mistake on his part. The kid and his buddies, idiots. The NFL for how they've made this possible, idiots. I can't necessarily. I mean, leaving your laptop open in your own home.
Yeah, I mean that's.
I do that all the time.
Say, what sort of security do you think this guy should be taking here? They're like, hey, son, maybe don't be an absolute moron and come in here and do this like some kid.
Yeah, he could have walked away for like 2 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
And just run right back.
You go to the bathroom. You have to lock up everything when you go to the bathroom in your own home.
I bet he does now.
Yeah, right? Check your wallet, bro.
I'm taking the laptop with me. Oh, man. This was Jeff Ulbrich on what he did when he found out what his son had done with the prank call.
So I made the Falcons aware of the situation, and then our next course of action was to try to get a hold of the Sanders family so we could apologize in person, which we were able to do. The Sanders family, Shedeur and Coach Sanders, were amazingly gracious, more gracious than they needed to be in a moment like this.
So that was Jeff Ulbrich on what he did when he found out his son made the prank call.
Oh, they're very gracious now. Now you can do anything to Dion or to Shedeur, and he'll be like, yeah, thank you. That's fine.
Doesn't bother me at all. It's all good.
That's fine.
Look, again, I said this the other day. In some ways, this story's pretty funny. Like, it's not like some federal issue out there, some criminal act. But I would love to have been a fly on the wall for that conversation, Joe, when Jeff Ulbrich found out what his son had done.
God, yeah.
I would love to see like the immediate part of that conversation and what took place.
And Matt, I mean, yeah.
Like, how do you think he found out? Do you think his son told him once the video started going viral, or do you think he saw the video?
That's a great question.
And then was like, hey.
Or he might have gotten a call because
maybe he got a call from security or something.
Yeah. That's a good question, though. But whatever it is, yeah. I mean, the smoke, because then you put yourself, put myself in the mode of a parent being mad at a kid, which actually I got a little bit of experience with. But man, this one would be a doozy.
Oh. What do you think would be worse if the kid came up to him and was like, hey, Dad, just so you know, there's a bit of a storm I've created here. Or if he just got the call from like NFL security.
That's
one's
actually
worse?
Well, I think it's way worse if the kid went to him and admitted it. Of course, you're furious at the moment, but that helps some, right?
Yeah, I guess.
It helps a little, other than finding out by somebody else.
Well, it helps a little until you get the email that you've been fined $100,000 from the National Football League.
Yeah, it doesn't make it good. Yeah, but boy, I hope the kid did that.
Well, there goes our vacation, son.
Yeah,
for the next 10 years.
Never mind the beach until 2038. Cool. Yeah, that is, by the way, that's the plot. Like Mike says, that's the plot of the the Seinfeld. When they pitch their show to NBC, a guy loses a court case and he has to be his butler. Oh God.
What do you think Arthur Blank's thinking about all this? It's like, oh, good. Here's $250,000. I mean, he's paying millions of dollars right now at the moment for Kirk Cousins to be his backup.
Kirk, you got to get rid of Kirk now.
Oh boy.
You like that? You like that?
Falconing is a great term, and I think it applies here.
I think it does. 615-737-1025. We're off and running today on Robby and Rexrode. Taking your reaction to that. The Falcons fined $250,000, and Jeff Ulbrich fined $100,000 for his son playing the prank call on Shedeur Sanders. More of your thoughts on that coming up next. Plus, we have heard from the Nashville Predators, and there is a date on which Barry Trotz is going to speak and address the future of Andrew Burnett, which, frankly, Joe, kind of tells me I think the way they're leaning. And we'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5-106.3 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, our phone number. Nevada Josh texting in, Joe, says, coaches, the money they get paid nowadays, $100,000 chump change. I don't know. $100,000 for an assistant coach is a lot of money.
Wait a minute. What's his position? What is his
He's DC.
Yeah, he's the DC. So
Yeah.
what's that? $2 million?
Probably around there, maybe a little more.
Yeah, but he's not really an established DC. I bet you it's not much more than that. I bet you it's not much more than $2 million. So if it's $2 million, that's 5% of his salary by my math, by my calculations. I mean, 5% of his salary in one chop, it's not nothing, man.
It's not.
Quick search says 1.6 per,
Wow.
1.6. Okay, so
roughly 6%.
according to Front Office Sports.
might even be 7%.
Yeah.
That's not
That's not good.
that's not nothing. Yeah. I mean, obviously they make a lot, but again, if he made 200,000, if he made 200,000 a year and he got a 10K fine, yeah. Feeling that one.
Yeah. Got one texter texting in that says, who won Jared versus Joe yesterday? I missed it. Do you think that's a troll?
Oh yeah, that's absolutely a troll. In fact, is that Big Joe's number?
It is not. I don't think.
Haywood Jablom, or whatever he calls himself. Yeah, it was an obvious Jared win that was preordained by Caroline, of course. TV prospect! TV prospect! I mean, how many times
I knew you were in trouble when that was the question.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I knew it would be the first question. Yeah, of course. And I actually easily annihilated his argument, but it doesn't matter. But it reminds me of all the times for years he made poor Ian say, "Look at Petit Fair, aka
PT.
PT." God, make it stop.
I mean, your Stilly voice and your PK voice are really evolving here on the
Thank you.
show.
I'm pretty excited about my PK voice.
He did not really seem to appreciate Edith Kuharski yesterday.
He better get used to
He
it.
better get used to it.
I got a
Barry.
lot of big plans for that one.
So, Joe, we have heard from the Nashville Predators. Barry Trotz will speak on Monday. So we're getting through the rest of this week, through the weekend, and on Monday, Barry Trotz will be addressing the media, which is interesting because Monday is also the day of the NHL draft lottery. So he's addressing the media on Monday at 12:15. The draft lottery later that night. He'll be addressing the media again after the draft lottery. I think that one's via Zoom. So we're going to hear from Barry Trotz a couple times next week. We saw a combination of things yesterday, Joe. Number one, Andrew Burnett is going to be an assistant coach with Team Canada at the World Championships, which start, I believe, next week. And then the Predators kind of put that out there like, hey, congratulations, Andrew Burnett going to coach Team Canada, which that was the first time we've heard really anything from them about Andrew Burnett since a couple weeks ago. So
He's still our coach, everybody.
I did take note of that. And I was like, okay, they're tweeting about Andrew Burnett right now. And then a few hours later, we heard that Barry Trotz will be speaking on Monday. Joe, to me, I could be wrong, but to me, this all adds up to Andrew Burnett is back as the head coach. It's very hard for me to believe that Barry Trotz has decided to fire him and now is going to be like, all right, I know what I'm doing, but I'm waiting until Monday to tell all you guys at a press conference.
Yeah.
So it's I think you can probably read into this that Andrew Burnett is back as head coach.
I think that makes sense. And I would assume that means Andrew Burnett knows.
I would assume.
Right? It's like, but I'm going to make you all wait to find out. Again, making us wait, who we can all complain about whatever. It doesn't, it's fine. Fans, media, what do we matter? But yeah, I just hope, as long as Andrew Burnett knows that he's fine, then that's fine, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to believe. I could be wrong. He could walk up on that stage Monday with his new coach next to him. As far as I know, I don't know.
That'd be exciting.
But it's difficult for me to believe that they have now identified the day that they're going to do the press conference, and it's not for another. They made the announcement yesterday, so it's another 5 days from then that they're just going to be sitting here in the wind for 5 days and Andrew Burnett still doesn't know that he's not coming back or whether he's coming back. It tells me that he has made his decision and that Andrew Burnett's back as coach.
Yeah. And so then just from the public perspective, and look, we've gone through the roller coaster of, clearly he's coming back. Oh, looks like maybe he's not coming back. Okay, he's coming back. That is a long time to let your fan base wonder.
It is.
Like this week could have been fine for that.
Now, I did see, I tweeted out the time of the press conference, and most of the reaction that I got yesterday was, oh, yeah, that means Andrew Burnett's coming back, which I agree with. Now, a couple people say, well, this whole thing was just much ado about nothing then. It's like, well, I mean, he clearly was thinking about it. Like Barry Trotz clearly, I mean, we're not making it up that he was supposed to speak last week and then he didn't.
Yeah.
So, like, he didn't just not do that for no reason. I think there were some serious discussions and consideration that was going on here as it relates to Andrew Burnett and his job.
Why would Barry Trotz want much ado if there was nothing?
Exactly.
What does that do for you?
Not anything. Just does not help.
Just tells everybody you have shaky confidence in your coach, or you know what I mean? Like,
right.
like if there's nothing, then you just immediately kill it from the start.
Right. So again, I mean, I could be wrong, and he could walk out there on Monday and say that Andrew Burnett's been fired. It's difficult for me to believe that that's going down that way at this point, based on the timing of all of it. But at the very least, I think there was legitimate consideration given to whatever happened at the exit meetings, right? Like, I mean, it's clearly some things were said that caused them to have some conversations at least about what was going on there.
So then what ultimately, if this is correct, what ultimately makes the difference in Burnett keeping his job?
It's a good question. I mean, I would have to think that there's at least been from the exit meetings and then afterward some sort of communication on how to fix it, right? Like, how do you fix taking into account whatever the player said, whatever your initial thoughts on what has to change next year. Like, I think there's probably some salesmanship that Andrew Burnett had to perform. And if he's back, my guess is he's performed it adequately at that point. Now, then the question becomes all right, let's say he's back as head coach. How long of a leash does he have next year? I can't imagine it's very long. Like, if they have a third consecutive season where they start poorly, like, you almost have to make a move at that point if you're the Predators. So, like, I think there's going to be some pressure on him from the jump next year. Like, when you look at the hot seat list next year, he's going to be right near the top of everybody's list heading into the year.
No question. And what's the firing time? American Thanksgiving range.
Yeah, I think it just depends on how it goes.
It depends on what's
going to
happening.
go 0-5 again. It may be pretty quick.
Didn'tLavie get fired like 8 games into his?
He got
last
fired.
season with the Flyers. Like,
he got fired.
Really
I think
early.
3 games into his
3?
last season in Philly, 3 or 4. Yeah.
Like,
Why are you even starting the year with?
Why? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh crap! We forgot to fire him.
He's still the coach. Oh my god! How about that?
3 games.
I think, if memory serves me correctly, I think it was like 3 or 4 games that he got fired. I'll double check on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Yeah. So the slow start from the Preds, of course, also like from UC Saros. Like, so he's got to figure out. He's got to figure out a lot of things, like you're getting back to playing well. But I mean, a slow start really can't happen for him.
They really need to be clicking on all cylinders.
He was fired on October 7th. So I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was legitimately 3 games.
God, so I don't know exactly how many that was, but
that's
pretty close. That's pretty quick.
That's got to be a record.
After the first period of the first game. Sorry. Peter. Oh, we meant to fire you in May.
Kept you around. We'll be joined by Alex Doherty from the Tennessean coming up next. Get his thoughts on the Predators and Andrew Burnett. We'll have the best and worst things in sports coming up at 6:45. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ian Safar here with you. We head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in our friend Alex Doherty, who covers the Nashville Predators for the Tennessean. Alex, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. First day of the Milwaukee Admirals semifinal matchup with the Rockford Ice Hogs. I'm pumped.
Rexrode's got his Admirals flag over here. He's waving it.
How are we even taking up Alex's time on a day like this?
I don't know.
So much pregame research and gearing up, listening to
Well, that's why Giannis got knocked out. He wanted to make sure he had free time available for the Admirals playoff run up there.
He can stretch out, I'm sure.
Yeah, good stuff.
Joe, I'm sure, Joe, you are as surprised as I was that Rockford beat the Chicago Wolves to make it to the Milwaukee Admirals. I was really surprised by that one.
No, for sure. I've been down on the Ice Hogs all year, man. I thought the Ice Hogs were barbecued back in January.
Yep, same. So, Alex, we have a date for Barry Trotz's press conference, which will be coming up on Monday, as we discussed in the last segment here. So, my read on it is it kind of feels like Andrew Burnett's coming back as head coach. It seems like a long time to be sitting here waiting on a press conference if they're firing the coach. Do you have the same read? And what do you make of the time it's taken Barry Trotz after the season, when he was supposed to speak last week, to be available and address the media, and what that means in your mind?
Honestly, I guess I hadn't really thought that it meant anything until you kind of brought it up in your last segment. I'm of the mind that Barry Trotz is the kind of guy that you really just have to wait to see what he's going to do until he does it. I guess I'm not. With the point that you make about the tweet they sent about him being the assistant coach for Team Canada, and then combined with the fact that they're gonna speak next Monday, or he's gonna speak next Monday. I think it's an interesting thing, but I mean, I don't think we can rule out that Barry Trotz is going to come out on Monday and say, I'm still evaluating.
Please rule it out.
I mean, because if you remember the John Hines situation, I mean, obviously that was a little different because, Barry Trotz just got there and David Poyle was still doing stuff. But he, there was obviously, you remember the press conference where John Hines was there and Barry Trotz was like, yeah, John Hines is a good coach. We're going to keep evaluating whether or not we think he's a good coach.
We'll see if there's something better, and then he might be able to come back.
Exactly. And so, I mean, I just think there's a possibility that he comes and says that he's not going to make a definitive statement. And if he doesn't, then we're back in the world of not knowing what's going to happen in the future. So, and that was, if I remember correctly, that was around Memorial Day, or at least they hired John Hines. I'm sorry, they hired Brunette on sometime around Memorial Day,
the end of May,
a couple years ago. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think your theory is a good one, that maybe this means that he's back, but I mean, at this point, I don't think we can say definitively. I think there's a chance he comes out and says, you know what, I'm still evaluating.
What about comes out and says he's fired? So we got all three. You're open to all three possibilities.
I don't think that he's going to come out and says he's fired. I think you're at least in a well,
like a holding pattern. It's holding pattern, or
it's hard for me to get to him coming out saying he's fired and they're not doing a press conference for anher 5 days. Like that's a pretty hard thing to get to.
I would agree with that. I don't think he's going to come out and say he's fired, but Barry seems to be doing a lot of evaluating, and I mean, it's not like there's anything that's happened over the last week in terms of the Predators, but I mean, there has been some coaches come available. I mean, that's happened. I mean, obviously the Mike Sullivan thing, Rick Tocchet. I mean, those are big names. I have no idea if that's influencing Barry Trotz or not, but you have to think that as the pool of coaching possibilities grows, the decision by Barry Trotz, and I think that's part of it. Like, maybe he doesn't want to lock himself into, yep, you already said that you're going to keep your coach, because what if what if tomorrow John Cooper gets fired from Tampa, or they part ways, and then all of a sudden he's got a huge opportunity to get another, Hall of Fame level coach. So I just think there's too much evaluating and too much going on in Barry Trotz's head to really convince myself either way of what he's going to do. Although I agree with you, Robbie. I don't think he's going to come out and say he's fired.
Okay, so maybe I'm making too big of a deal of this because ultimately it's pro sports and it's the results, and we know how often people get fired in this league. But if at this point you aren't coming out and saying, yeah, he's our coach, like, what are you saying about your confidence in him? Like, like, what are you telling your fans and even your team about what you think about the coach? And then you end up going back to him at some point. I find that to be public in terms of what you are essentially saying publicly problematic. But again, I guess we all know too, even if it does happen, that he's on the hot seat immediately next year anyway, right?
I mean, I don't know how much this is really, how much of this is really happening in the organization versus outside. I mean, there's a lot of situations in which the organization has just a totally different viewpoint of what the narrative even is. What's even happening. They might not view this as, I mean, they have to know exactly. They have to know how it's being perceived, but internally they might just think, well, of course, yeah, Burnett's our guy, and he's under contract, and he's going to be our guy for next year. So I think there's a possibility that they just have a different viewpoint on this whole situation, and that they, it's also possible that they're making other changes. We don't know anything about the assistants at this point. Maybe that's up in the air, or maybe they're discussing the many ways in which they can turn this around via trade or big free agents that they could sign. I know that there's several big ones they could look at. Maybe they're just thinking about that. And I agree with you. I think that there's the perception is that this does not give you a lot of confidence that they trust Andrew Burnett. But I think, like I said last time I was on your show, I think all this really means is that Andrew Burnett gets like 2 more months, right? He gets October and November. And if he doesn't turn it around by November, by Thanksgiving, he's gone. And I think I don't see any way in which he's still the coach if they start 5-10 or even 500, even like 8-8 or something after the first couple months, and he's still there. I would be very shocked. So they've got to come out looking like a real contender, top of the Central Division somewhere, beating teams handily. They've got to look really good to start, which is a lot to ask, right? To turn around that team into a contender right off the bat. That's a lot to ask. So yeah, you're right. It does not look like they are really trusting Andrew Burnett a whole lot right here.
So do you get the sense, this is the first time we've had you on since the end of season media stuff with Jonathan Marchessault and what he said. And, Barry Trotz was supposed to speak that week. Like that, they didn't make that up. Like he was supposed to speak, and then it didn't happen. It's like, do you think that what Marchessault said, both in the media and maybe even privately with some of the other conversation that they had with the end of season meetings, do you think that changed maybe the way that this was viewed by Trotz and allowed him to really take some more time to really think about things? Like, how do you view kind of what was said publicly and what that means for what you think may have been said behind closed doors from the player side of things?
I don't see any way that it couldn't have influenced it, right? I mean, those were pretty serious comments, I think, from Marchessault. The Stamkos comments were more, I guess, professional is the way I would use it, or maybe not that. Maybe polished,
measured,
sanitized a little bit, but still, suggesting that there needs to be adjustments. The Marchessault comments, I think, were just another piece of the puzzle that we've seen, that the Marchessault and Predators marriage has not been great for the first year. So that's one thing I think we can say definitively. But I think it probably influenced Barry Trotz in terms of what he's thinking about. How do we make this work? Because Marchessault's got 4 more years on his contract. He's got Andrew Burnett as the coach. Stamkos has 3 more years. There's you've got to make it work somehow. So how do we do this? We can't just proceed forward as if nothing happened. So it had to have influenced it a little bit. I'm just going to say I do think that there's a little bit too. They didn't want to have a press conference in the middle of the NFL draft going on with the Tennessee Titans having the number 1 pick. I know that seems like
well, I agree with that,
maybe,
but they knew the draft was happening when they originally scheduled it, I guess is my point. Like the draft did not sneak up on them last week.
Right. So I just think that's probably part of it. And so all of this combined with, he doesn't know exactly what he's going to do, but I think probably the March or so comments were the big thing that pushed it, to delaying it to next Monday.
Big one tonight between the Admirals and the Ice Hogs.
Yeah, the
7 o'clock
Admirals
tonight.
No drama there.
No drama.
Just winning.
They're
just
trying
wins
to march
and no
forward
drama.
for a championship, baby. Alex,
It's a big rivalry. I'm telling you, this is going to be a big one.
it's going to be a big one.
Those
Alex,
varmints from Rockford.
really good stuff. Appreciate you taking time to be with us today. We'll see you soon, my friend.
Okay, see you later.
Alex Doherty from the Tennessee and our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. I mean, if he gets up there on Monday and he says that they're still evaluating, I just don't think the fan base is going to respond very well to that.
Yeah, like I hear what Alex is saying about, like internally, absolutely that happens all the time, right? Internally, it's like they don't think the way the narrative is, but internally they have to understand the conversation is all about this. And like this is a huge story, like whether you like it or not, whether you think Brunette's your guy or not, you have to understand sometimes the outside world does matter in these things.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll have the best and worst things in sports coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063 The Game.
The best and worst of the sports week. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
This is the worst. You look like you're feeling sorry for yourself. I believe in miracles. Yes! Unbelievable.
He's one of one. He is him.
This is a Coke bottle. It's not a crystal ball.
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
Okay, let's go.
It is that time of the week, time for the best and worst things in sports. We'll take your best things, your worst things on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Joe Rexrode, kick us off with your best and worst things in the world of sports.
Speaking of he of him, that Travis Hunter, we've been hunting him up.
Jeez.
Oof, oof. So I'm going to be a little sunshiny here. My best in sports. My best in sports, Tennessee Titans draft Cam Ward. Because you know what? No idea how it'll work out. Doesn't matter what I thought going in or you thought going in, whether you liked it or you didn't. The Tennessee Titans have drafted Cam Ward. The Titans have an exciting quarterback coming in to try to be a franchise quarterback, and we should all be entertained. We should all be excited to see how it's going to work out. So I like what I've heard from him. I like a lot of what I've seen from him, and we're going to see how it works out. My worst, I'll actually keep Cam part of this. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but the Shedeur thing was terrible, and terrible in terms of, just some of the stuff that was around it. And it is too bad that like Cam Ward got mentioned for like 9 seconds on the draft. I mean, he was the number one overall pick. I'm sure he's okay with it. He had his moment here and he got to do his thing with his family. He got Warren Moon's number 1 jersey. That could be someone's worst in sports or best in sports.
Yeah.
But the Shedeur saga, and especially what I ranted about the other day, like the conspiracy stuff that's come out of it. Stephen A. Smith. I mean, just ridiculous. And some of the other commentary all around it has been pretty bad. That's my worst.
Ian Safar, your best and worst things in the world of sports.
I think best, this is kind of like, I don't know. I saw this week, watched it a few times, that Dalton Varsho.
Yeah.
The catch for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, that was
seen
unbelievable.
That? Kind of falling down, tripped over the warning track or his feet a little bit, turned his back completely to the play.
Yeah.
And backhanded swipe with his glove and still snagged it.
I've never seen one quite like that in baseball.
He kind of created his own best play, given it was like his own fault that it got that difficult because he tripped over his own feet. Like there wasn't anything that kind of led to that. But hey, to keep like your eye on the ball and be able to track it like that, it's pretty solid.
It's
so
crazy.
I'll go with best. And then the worst, I'm just going to go in general. The NFL draft prank calls, all of them. The Shedeur one got, but it's all ridiculous. The pranking. I don't know how old are these people pranking. Who did you make prank calls in college like this to people over like maliciously? It was one thing if you like called your friend. When you were young and you randomly called somebody and tried to be funny or did something, but it wasn't like you were trying to overly be malicious and like think it's hilarious and then videotape it and put it out there as like it's going to prove like you've done something really hilarious. Just in general, bad form.
Yeah, people kind of suck. When I was in college, Jerky Boys came out. That was like
the Jerky Boys.
That was the height of prank
yeah.
calling. So
but those were a little innocuous and it was random and it was
right.
This is a little bit more targeted, like trying to do damage. It's a little rough.
My best thing in sports, the Florida Panthers. My apologies to the Florida Panthers. I had them losing in the first round, but they look like they're going to be an absolute buzzsaw here. So we'll see what that looks like. They totally dispatched of the Tampa Bay Lightning, who, by the way, by like all the metrics, are an elite team in the league, and they just basically just threw them by the wayside. So Florida Panthers look really good, and they may go back to back here. We'll see. We'll see what happens on that front. My worst thing's Bill Belichick in this story that will not go away. And I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later in the show, Joe, but we can talk about it some right now. Like, more stuff, even since we talked about it yesterday, continues to come out. And Belichick puts out this long statement via North Carolina yesterday that, about the CBS interview and about how they misrepresented what was going to be asked in the interview. And, they had a productive 35 minutes and only 8 minutes were shown. And of course, CBS came out later and said, yeah, none of that's true. We didn't agree to like certain questions would be off limits and all this other stuff. So it's just
How did you meet? Oh my God!
Yeah, it's just a never-ending story between Bill Belichick, his 24-year-old girlfriend now, and I'm sure North Carolina is really loving this right now.
Did you say never-ending story?
Yeah.
That's a nice bedtime story.
Thank you.
Try it out, Bill. No, it's unbelievable.
Here's some milk, Bill.
Yeah, little, story time. Put a little, what did we have? We had, oh my gosh, Baby Genius.
Yeah.
They still do that stuff now?
don't
This is
think
like
so.
20 years ago. These little videos put on, you put them in the little bouncy chair, go to
Baby
sleep.
Einstein.
Baby Einstein. Yeah.
Yeah.
Baby
Oh,
Einstein.
yeah, Baby Einstein. There we go. Oh my God, it's Bill. Bill, have you heard of Dr. Seuss? Nah, it's
Here's some simple songs, Bill. The wheels on the bus go round and round.
oh, good Lord. Bill and Jordan sitting in a tree. All right. No, it's ridiculous. Like why are you extending the story? And actually, this is where like Jared and I agreed on this on his sham Jared vs. Joe in yesterday. It's like Bill Belichick's been a public figure dealing with media since he was Bill Parcells' D coordinator 40 years ago, the New York Giants. Like basically that's when like the public gained consciousness of Bill Belichick. And like he's learned nothing in 40 years.
It's wild to me. Just that. I mean, and look, even let's say that they're right and CBS did go like they just selectively edited a lot of this crap, which I find hard to believe, but let's say that they're right. Like even some of the answers, like Belichick was just like totally silent. It's like you've been doing interviews for 45 years, 50 years at this point. You know how to handle yourself in an interview. Like what's going on?
Also, of course, 35 minutes and then only 8 was used. That's how it always works. There's all and in any form, like there's always way more stuff than what you use.
I mean, if I was CBS, I'd probably just release the whole thing. Like, here, watch it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Put it on the internet.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to hear what Charles says. I got Charles Barkley over here like, yeah, I'm really good friends with Bill. I think I'm a little concerned. I'm gonna have to call him and help him out. Like, jeez. Everybody wants to have an intervention now.
Jared yesterday to end the show was like, there's only one person who can get through to Belichick, and it's Brady. Brady's got to call him. Brady's got to have an intervention. Like, okay.
Probably not.
Brady might be like, hey, I'll spend some time with Jordan. Work it out.
615-737-1025. It's our phone number. We're going to get into the Titans coming up next. You seem to be not very proud.
Yeah, sometimes I say things I shouldn't say.
Sometimes I look over at your face. I'm like, oh, boy.
Wow.
I don't know if I can continue.
My brain just sent that to my mouth. No kidding.
We'll get into Brian Callahan and Cam Ward coming up next. How can Callahan properly develop and maximize what the Titans have in Cam Ward? We'll take your thoughts on that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. We'll have Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports with us at 8 o'clock. We will get into the Titans, the NFL draft. I'm sure the Bill Belichick story with him as well. So looking forward to that coming up at 8 o'clock with Charles Robinson. So, Joe, today, one of the things that I think is important to bring up here, now that we've gotten through the draft process and the Titans have, for the most part, their team. We'll see, nibbling around the edges here, some more roster moves that they can make between now and camp. But for the most part, they've got their team. And now the question is, how can Brian Callahan maximize what they've got in Cam Ward? How can he properly develop Cam Ward? Is he the guy to properly develop Cam Ward? What did he learn from the Will Levis experience last year? I think there's a lot that goes into this. And I heard, the guys on DVD talking about this a little bit yesterday in terms of, we talked about this last offseason. There was a lot of, for lack of a better term, pumping up the tires of Will Levis last offseason, right? Like he was all in on Will Levis, and Will Levis is a big part of why I took this job. And you remember the Albert Breer piece where they went into detail about like some things that he really likes in Will Levis's game and talked about, how good of a quarterback he felt he could be in this league. And we know how it played out. I mean, it was bad from the jump. I think the first couple of games on the field last year, Callahan was in shock with some of the things that Levis was doing out there that he just did not anticipate based on what he saw from him in the meeting rooms and on the practice field and whatnot. So now the question becomes, all right, what did you learn from that? And what's going to be different with Cam Ward? Now we know Cam Ward, Will Levis, two different players, two different types of players, and you drafted Cam Ward number 1 overall. So that is different than getting somebody in the second round and you joining a job where he was already in place. Like this is what the job now is for Brian Callahan, Cam Ward and his development. So as we sit here today, Joe, and you look at the job in front of Callahan here with Cam Ward coming in, what's your thought on kind of where he stands right now and what this last year has been like for him in terms of what he's learned to try to apply this now with Cam Ward coming in here to be the guy that's around for longer than this year to develop him?
Yeah, it's an interesting question on what he's learned and how he might apply it. First of all, there are Titans fans, and I'm sure who will respond to this conversation, who are like, he's obviously not a quarterback developer. Why is he still here? Clearly, he has no clue. I understand how you hear all this stuff, like you just mentioned about Levis last year, his excitement. Like, how could he misjudge it that badly? And then you see the product and how they've just completely given up. They drafted quarterback number 1 because they're the worst team in the league, et cetera, and be like, man, how could you have confidence in this guy? I think if you are a Titans fan and you're hopeful, basically, I think you need this to be a situation where Levis simply demonstrated all the traits in the film room, in the building, on the practice field, and then just is the opposite of a gamer, right? And again, I'm not saying that takes responsibility off Callahan's plate, but that does happen sometimes. That's what you have to hope is that, look, it's just a case of, some people can prepare and do all the things and they just can't perform. Some people suck in practice and they're great in games. It's like you'd rather have that, but that's what you have to hope. So what did he learn? I don't know. I mean, I think the thing is you also have to hope if you're a Titans fan, if you're the Titans, that he learned a lot about being the CEO and how you balance all those things.
Yeah.
Obviously, neither aspect worked out at all for him. Now you could say the quarterback being bad may be as big a reason as any, that the quarterbacking being bad, because obviously the backup was bad too, being the main factor in being 3-14, but there was a lot of issues with this team. So, I mean, it's a huge prove it year for him. And yet, as we've talked about, is he on such thin ice that Cam Ward is immediately going to have a new mentor here, or quickly going to have a new mentor here?
Well, I think some of that's going to depend on how much not even from a win-loss standpoint, although that's part of it. But how much has he improved from last year to this year as a coach? I've said it, and I didn't think that even as bad as their roster was last year, and it was bad, that I didn't think that there were enough answers that he and that staff found along the way. And look, maybe at the end of the day, it was just as simple as, well, you can't find answers that don't exist. I mean, maybe that's what it was. But I do think they just looked overmatched throughout the whole year. And that's in every aspect. I mean, it just looked like they were just overwhelmed the whole year. And, he talked at the end of the season about how managing that part, being a CEO, being the head coach of a football team, and not just being basically, a glorified offensive coordinator out there, something that he's got to be better at. Like he's got to improve on this year. I think if I'm a Titans fan, one thing that, and I think you'll have differing perspectives on this. How is it that you were so confident in Levis and so confident in his abilities to the point where like he was effusive in his praise for Levis before the season started? How were you that? And then it played out the way that it played out. Now, if you're an optimist on the Callahan front, you could say, well, look, sometimes it's exactly what you said. People do exactly what you want them to do in the meeting room, the practice field. They can take it to the practice field. And Levis, just when the lights got bright, he got too tense or he put too much pressure on himself and he just fell apart. And maybe you can't know that until you see it in game action. But I think if you're a pessimist, you would say, well, this is the same guy who thought that Will Levis was going to be some really good quarterback and spent all offseason long talking about how he was a big part of why he took the job. And then it was a total flop once he got out there. So who do you blame for that? Like how much blame? Certainly most of it goes on Levis, but how much do you blame Callahan? I think there are a lot of Titans fans that feel that way heading into this
and again,
year.
it's fair. It's so look at the whole track record. I think it's fair to say for sure he's been around great quarterbacks. It's hard for me to believe that he doesn't have any hand at all in Joe Burrow and his success, but also Joe Burrow's great. And I think Joe Burrow has success. I don't think Joe Burrow is system proof like some people think, but I think he has success with a lot of different situations. But you definitely would have to acknowledge that Brian Callahan has seen greatness, knows what it is, knows what it looks like, knows what it does. And again, I think that Levis, and people are always asking him to compare and all that stuff, but I think again, he saw some of the preparation stuff with Levis, which is huge.
Yeah.
He's already been effusive to me, like on draft night, in praising Cam Ward.
I agree.
Which is fine, but I don't think the expectations are going to be, and I don't think it's because he's like a carnival barker out here, like who are coaches famous for doing that, for overstating things? I mean, some come to mind, but I just can't think of anybody specific. But some coaches do that. I don't think that's it.
The new Jags GM thinks Travis Hunter is going to bend time and space out there. So there's that.
A new human race, thanks to Travis. But I think that he's being honest with how he feels. But then obviously, like the bar is pretty high here for like this year to see some good stuff from Cam Ward.
So we'll take your thoughts on the Brian Callahan front. What do you make of where he sits heading into this year? And is he the guy that is going to properly develop and maximize what the Titans think they have in Cam Ward? More of your thoughts on that coming up next. 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063 The Game. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan today as the Nashville Sounds have a doubleheader against Gwinnett. Pregame beginning at 3:45, first pitch at 4 o'clock. Coverage also available on the Game Nashville app and at theGameNashville.com. Sounds baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks and Family Leisure. 615 Open Charity Golf Tournament benefiting Folds of Honor, presented by Gary Force Acura at Hermitage Golf Course, also coming up on Thursday, May 29th. You can sign up to play or sponsor at 615open.com. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ian Safar here with you on this Thursday morning, taking your thoughts on Brian Callahan and Cam Ward. And is he the right guy to develop Cam Ward? Can Brian Callahan maximize what the Titans think they have in Cam Ward? You know, the quarterbacks that he's been around is an interesting part of this, Joe, because that was a huge selling point when he first got the job. Look at this guy and look at how many quarterbacks he's worked with. Now, with the Titans doing the amount of losing that they did last year, Joe, that very quickly with Titans fans turned into, well, that's great. He was around all those guys. How many of those guys was he actually responsible for? You know, we had a lot of different conversations about that throughout the season. I don't think it's a bad thing to be around and to work with that many different high-level quarterbacks that he's worked with. Now, I also think that there's a difference between working with some of those quarterbacks, whether it's a Peyton Manning or a Derek Carr or whoever, and even Joe Burrow, like Joe Burrow coming up into the league. I think there's a difference between working with those guys as an offensive coordinator or as a quarterback coach and as a head coach. Like, you're in charge of so many things as a head coach. And yet one of the big reasons why you're here is your ability to work with and develop quarterbacks. So kind of threading that needle, how equipped is he going to be to do that this year? That's going to be really interesting to see how that process plays out for him. You know, again, looking at their roster right now, I think wins are going to be hard to come by. Like, they're probably not going to end up with 7 or 8 wins this year just based on paper what they have right now. So as you're navigating through all of that and you're trying to develop a quarterback, that's a really challenging set of circumstances that I think he's got ahead of him this year.
Yeah, without question. Now, Steve Lehman, we talked about this yesterday with Kaharski. You know, Steve Lehman talking about all the coaches who had been fired, the situations with the number 1 pick, and then they move on to the different coach. You know, in Chicago's case, for example, they had a defensive coach, and then they've moved on to the offensive, genius quarterback developer coach. How many of those coaches? I mean, I think about Trevor Lawrence. I mean, Urban Meyer built his career on basically his offense, like his spread offense stuff that he had going back to like Bowling Green and everything. But Urban Meyer wasn't known as a quarterback, but that wasn't like his trade wasn't developing quarterbacks. How many of these early failures, or early in the tenure of the quarterback failures, have been coaches who actually are supposed to be quarterback? I don't have the answer. That's probably something worth looking up at some point. Yeah. But look, there's a lot more to his job, but this is the main thing about his job. And it's like, again, you get the wide range. You get this texter saying, I love how we forget how Beta Brian cried after a win against the lowly Patriots. I mean, that's fine. But if Cam Ward's good this year and they're even just a little bit better than expected, I mean, that's what you're looking for, I mean, you got to get, first of all, like, you got to get used to, like, he's more like how coaches are now. Yep. He's a little bit more. And again, you can have a problem with that. By the way, if Vrabel's an alpha, I mean, I need a little bit more than golf clapping at a Celtics playoff game. Yay.
Paint your face, Vrabel.
Yeah, seriously. Paint your chest. Let's go, man. But, yeah, it's all about this, it really is. It's all about this. And someone on the YouTube chat's like, he was just in a situation to try to get the job, talking about Levis. No, man. Like, he was talking about Levis right before the season.
Training camp.
He was not lying, and he wasn't lying. He wasn't BSing. I really don't believe that at all. He went on busting with the boys, and he was very detailed about what he said. I mean, this can happen. It can happen that you have talent and do everything right, and then it just, in the games, you're not wired to, like, handle the situations well. You're not wired to be able to slow it down and be poised. Some people are. And like, we don't know. The thing is, he doesn't know if Cam Ward is either. They love Cam Ward and they love their interviews and they see plenty of good film. You also see bad film. This is true with Levis too.
Yeah.
You don't know in this league what it's going to look like when it really comes down to it. And he's got pass rushers bearing down on him and he's trying to see a coverage disguise right after the snap.
Yeah. Well, and I guess the question associated with that is how much of the poor quarterback play we saw last year was as simple as Levis just is, as you said, not wired to handle it on game day, and how much of it was the coach not putting his quarterback, his offense in the right situation.
Fair question.
I don't know. Like, I mean, some of it's as simple as personnel, right? Like when your offensive line can't block, you're probably going to be in some serious trouble if you're a quarterback at that point. So how much better have they gotten this year? We're going to find out. I think we all know that they do not have the greatest skill position group in the world heading into this year. So how can you maximize what they are if you're Brian Callahan? So some of it's as simple as your personnel, but I do think it's a fair thing to wonder, like, it was also his first time calling plays. And I think we probably glossed over that too much last year around here, given everything else that was going on. Like, is he a good play caller? Like, is he a good offensive game planner when it comes to this is his baby. Getting out there and planning. You're in charge of the game plan for the offense. It ultimately comes back to you. Personnel is a huge part of it, obviously, but is he a good offensive game planner? Because that's what you want him to be when you're hiring him as your head coach. That's part of it. No, I don't know what the answer to that is.
It's totally fair. Did he give him the answers? Did he adjust things enough around him? Some things, like you can't block, man, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for the quarterback not to get happy feet, and it's going to be tough for anything to work. And that was a limitation. But also, they brought in his dad to be the offensive line coach. Didn't work out well. His high school buddy, who, again, is an NFL coach, so it's not like he just pulled his high school buddy out of, like, working the Burger King drive-thru to be his OC, but he is his high school buddy who's his OC, and he's a huge part of it, too. If he wasn't a huge part of it, Brian Callahan wouldn't have had a chance to get this job. He was a non-play calling OC in Cincinnati. But, again, it's like, sneakerhead on the YouTube. I would lie for a chance to make millions, too. You guys act like Brian Callahan only had this as a possible job. He actually – plenty of teams were interested in Brian Callahan over multiple years.
Well, again, he had already been hired when he started talking about most of this stuff. Like, yeah. I'm sure he was, he was complimentary of Will Levis in the interview process, and that was a big part of the job at that time. But a lot of what he said that we're referring to was well after he took the job.
And also, again, if you are talking about someone who has, he was one of the hot names, and he had multiple. I know, like, he was supposed to go to Carolina, and then he canceled the interview.
The Titans didn't let him get out of the building.
Yeah, so don't you think he actually thought some of these things about Levis? I think he probably did. Man, I think that guy sucks. But you know what? I'm going to lie and confine myself to this job with a quarterback I think sucks. And then I'm going to talk about how awesome he is.
No,
then act shocked when he sucks.
If he didn't believe that he was good, why would you take that job if you're him?
Right.
Like, you're just setting yourself up for failure.
Right. So again, like Sneaker, you're talking about this like this was his only shot in the dark to ever get a head coaching job. That's not true. You got to be selective, and some of these guys are. Lions coach, Bears coach Ben Johnson had chances a year before, and when he didn't like it, he probably wouldn't mind coaching Jaden Daniels now, but he backed off, and then he waited. Okay, I'll take Caleb Williams.
Yeah,
people are selective in these situations when they're the hot, especially the hot OC guy in this league. That's what everybody wants.
Well, and clearly as they've gone through this evaluation process with Ward, they have walked away with things that they obviously love about him that they think are going to translate really well to the NFL level, and that he's going to be a star quarterback in this league. Like, what can Brian Callahan formulate a plan and a system around Cam Ward that maximizes what he is? Like, that's to me, that's one of the most important questions of this franchise right now is, like, where they're going from here. Do they have the right guy to do that right now? Because, look, I'm totally with everybody that says it would be really bad for Cam Ward to go through his rookie year and learn this system and get in work with all those things, and then you just pull it out from under him after 1 year and you go hire somebody else. Having said that, You know what would probably be worse for Cam Ward is if Brian Callahan's not the right guy and is not the guy that can maximize him, and you hold on to him just for the sake of holding on to him. Like it's a really tough needle to thread where they're at with him right now.
Yeah. And do the Titans have the decision makers to be able to, adequately determine that? I mean, it may be obvious to everybody, but maybe it won't be.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. More of your thoughts on the Brian Callahan, Cam Ward front to get to coming up next. Charles Robinson will be with us at 8 o'clock. All that coming up. This week's Nashville's Best Deal, Prince's Hot Chicken, the original and iconic hot chicken joint. For a limited time, grab half off a $25 gift card at thegamenashville.com/deals. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Any critiques of Cam, it usually centers around the risk taking or maybe playing the hero ball from time to time. Did you see any evidence of that, or what was your kind of take on those potential?
Yeah, I think anytime you have quarterbacks that have talent, that have the ability to make those types of plays, they tend to try to make them, and they're confident in their ability to do it. And most of the time, and the guys that I've been around that put those types of plays out there, is they're going to make a whole lot more of them than they miss. And that's the mentality you want to have. And I think that he's got that mentality. He's got the talent to do it. There's definitely things where if you asked him, there's a couple of throws where like, that probably wasn't the best idea. And he'd go, yeah, you're probably right. And that's okay. That's part of maturing and growing in the game. And you learn how to play quarterback at the NFL level, there is a balance to that. There's a time to be efficient, a time to take completions, a time to throw the ball away. And there's also a time to let your talent take over, and then all the things that God gave you, allowed to put it on display. And I think that he understands that, which is the part that I think is the most encouraging for me, is that all the things that he did, any throws that he made that you would argue were hero ball throws, he had a very good reason for why he did it, and also was aware that if it was one that was in the bad spot and he shouldn't have made that particular throw, he was aware that probably shouldn't have done that there. And I think that's half the battle with those things.
That's Brian Callahan on Cam Ward. Taking your thoughts on the Titans and Cam Ward. Rexrode's already shaking his head coming back from break there.
That was a good. As always, Brian Callahan's very good at press conferences. I'm not shaking my head at him.
Okay.
Here's JC in Goodlettsville. Come on, Robby. If you had a press conference and asked your thoughts on Stillman, you'd take the high road and not share truly how bad he is. He's an optimistic head coach and probably knew Levis had confidence issues, so he wanted Levis to hear confidence from his coach. You can't possibly have paid attention then last year, JC. You can't. You can't have paid attention. He genuinely thought Levis was good. I mean, it wasn't like, sure, feeling pretty good. No, he was effusive in praise for all the things he did well. I mean, he genuinely thought that. I don't know why this is hard to believe.
It's hard to believe because we saw it the way it played out on the field, and there's such a gigantic discrepancy there. That's why. But again, I think sometimes you just got to think about logically what's happening here. Again, Brian Callahan, it doesn't really serve anybody well to totally blow smoke. Now, I also think there's a difference. There's a difference between hyping up your quarterback and giving answers in a media setting that project confidence in him, and then going out of your way to praise him. There's a difference in those two things. And that's what Brian Callahan did last year. He went out of his way throughout a multi-month process, by the way, went out of his way to praise Will Levis from everything that he, from being around him in the meeting room to the film room, to the practice field, to the physical tools that he brought to the table. That wasn't just, I got to build my quarterback up here. He legitimately thought he was a really good player.
And I think sometimes it's hard. We all do this. I do this. We now have seen the season. We've lived through it. We think what we think about Will Levis as a quarterback now. But put yourself back then, because I thought he had a chance to be really good. Like Daniel says here on the YouTube chat, we all thought Levis had big-time potential last season, especially after the Miami comeback game. There were moments in that rookie year when he gets thrown in where you're like, oh, okay, you can see it. I mean, look, I still contend the entirety of his rookie season, they weren't all good games, but I didn't see stuff that we saw early last year. Now, then you get to, so why did it get worse when Callahan comes in? That's a fair question. But, yeah, Brian Callahan genuinely thought he had something in Will Levis. And he wasn't – and then right now in revising history, my God, how could he have thought that? He was not alone at all. Well, let's all be honest with ourselves.
I mean, Amy thought for sure they had something. We got Rand. We got a good young quarterback. Yeah, you do.
That is true.
Now, yeah. I mean, I guess Levis is still there, so I guess you still got him.
He is still a part of the Tennessee Titans, by the way.
Which, again, we got people asking about, which I know PK downplays. I think I'm against PK on this one when we got people in the text line asking right now, what happens if Will Levis outplays Cam Ward in training camp? It's
yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah.
And again, PK and whoever can dismiss, fans say, but okay. I mean, it's kind of like we were talking about with the Preds earlier. I mean, if you don't think that the narratives and the discussion and all these things matter at all, I think you kind of have your head in the sand a little bit. So if people on the outside are saying it, then again, what happens when Cam Ward has a couple terrible games? They lose. The locker room, these guys who are busting their butt and getting their heads smashed in every week are sick of losing. And they're like, you know what? We could have won if number 8 was out there. Then what happens then? You remove number 8, you remove the discussion, and you're just going to take your lumps with the rookie.
No, because the bottom line is, like, frankly, if I'm in charge, and this is probably why I'm not in charge, I don't really care what Will Levis does in training camp. Like, you've drafted Cam Ward and he's your quarterback. So, I mean, Will Levis could go out there and play amazing in training camp, and I'd be like, I don't care. Cam Ward is our quarterback. Like, that would be the way I would handle it. I know it's not as simple as that in professional sports.
Yeah, but also the reps that he's going to be playing amazing in are going to be with the 2s and the 3s.
Yeah.
So, now granted, he's going to get if he's on this team, he'll get a ton of preseason game work.
Sure.
Right? I mean,
Get excited.
Which, by the way, would not. I mean, I think absolutely could be. Hey, rest of league.
Yeah.
See, look, would you like this guy? We'll take a 6.
Yeah, I mean, look, they said the other day that they didn't try to move him at the draft, and to which my original response to that was like, all right, well, is that true, or was like there no interest? Like, did nobody ever contact you about? Hey, yeah, we'll take Will Levis. I don't know what the answer to that is.
Yeah, it's like, no, I haven't talked to anybody about that job.
Yeah, exactly.
My agent did, but I'm not lying.
Exactly. I did enjoy Callahan's little spiel he went on there coming back from break, though, about how, there's a time for this, a time for that. I was like, we in Ecclesiastes over here? There's a time for everything under the sun? Good gracious. What's going on over, Brian? Look, this is going to be a continuing conversation heading into camp, because I truly believe this is one of the most important questions in the franchise right now. Do they have the right person to develop Cam Ward? And like, if they do, that's great. And if it's just as simple as Will Levis could not put it all together when game time rolled around, and Brian Callahan actually does have a great system in place, and he actually does know what he's doing offensively, and he does learn a lot from year 1 to year 2 being the CEO of a football program. That's great. Like, that's best case scenario. You want Brian Callahan here to work out. What's going to be tricky is with this roster that still has a lot of shortcomings, and a rookie quarterback coming in that's a really difficult thing to do in the NFL, even though Jane Daniels and CJ Stroud have made it look easy the last 2 years. It's not easy. Like, when there are struggles that will inevitably come at some point this year, probably early, like, how do you stick with it? And how does Brian Callahan pull his team along with him, and more importantly, his quarterback along with him when that happens?
And all those things you said may not be true. One thing that definitely is true as part of the equation, the offensive support system around him was buns.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that makes it harder to evaluate, and it makes it way easier to look bad.
Yep. And how much better is that this year? I don't know. I think the offensive line's better. We're going to find out.
Somewhat.
We're going to find out how much better it is. I still got a lot of questions about the skill position and who's catching the ball and who's making plays for the quarterback. So that's all part of it. 615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll have the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up next. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports will be with us at 8 o'clock. We'll get into all things Titans and the NFL with him. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment. Let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
Joe could have said, yes, after the draft, I realized Jared was right and Shedeur was a TV prospect.
This is Amy's poodle groomer.
I think it belongs in the Take Hall of Fame.
You were wrong about Shedeur, and I made a roast.
She goes fox hunting, and you stand guard for assassin.
That right there is a titan.
I've been thinking about this, Mr. Hand. If I'm here and you're here, doesn't that make it our time? Certainly there's nothing wrong with a little feast on our time.
So what am I supposed to correct myself on? Am I supposed to say, you know what? Shedeur actually was a really, really good prospect.
TV prospect. He's a TV prospect.
Would like a world of change. It is that time of the day. Time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. Another masterpiece by Ian Safar there. Joseph, the floor is yours.
I really liked it, especially with Spicoli. Until you bring in Creed. You're not going to play Metallica for me? My rant is about Metallica. It's a joyful rant.
Oh, a joyful rant? Okay.
It's a joyful.
I didn't know that.
I know. I could have told you. But now you've made
Why
me
would we
need...
play something that you like for the rant?
Because this is a joyful rant. Okay? Now, let me tell you a story. June 24th, 1994. So, first of all, great website. It's like setlist.fm. You can find set lists. Oh, yeah. It's amazing. And I've used it before to, like, when I'm about to go to a show to see what a band is playing, but I didn't realize it went back. The Ionia Free Fair in Ionia, Michigan. Okay.
Yes.
You've talked about the Wilson County Fair. This is basically the Wilson County Fair of Michigan. Actually, Charles is coming on next. I know he knows about the Ionia County Fairgrounds, the Ionia Free Fair. I don't know why the hell this happened, but Metallica in 1994 played the Ionia Free Fair, and a whole bunch of us drove over from East Lansing to go see Metallica. They weren't supporting an album; they were just jamming, and I got separated from all my friends. I think there were like 10 of us. I got separated early because it was a big field of people beating the crap out of each other. And I just spent 2 hours in pure joy in mosh pits getting hit from behind. There was like this high school girl who absolutely probably almost broke one of my ribs. I mean, she blasted me. And it was a magical night, as you might imagine.
I don't know that I would have handled that situation very well.
Well, you just got to get in the mosh pit. I mean, I gave a shot back, and then everybody's jumped, That was back. People moshed a lot then. And I don't know if Metallica is necessarily like that was more like a Rage Against the Machine type thing. But Metallica, everybody moshed in the night. So we were moshing for Metallica. But that show was amazing. They played Harvester of Sorrow. They played Disposable Heroes, which is a little bit of a deep cut. They started with Bread Fan. It was amazing. So tonight, going to Metallica, I'm taking my kid. I'm going to expose him to a band that, like, I haven't liked any of their music since 1991, but I'm going to give you my top 10 songs. I know that you really wanted to hear this.
I'm very much interested. Yes.
That you really wanted to hear my top 10 songs that I hope we hear tonight. First of all, Harvester of Sorrow. I think that's the best Metallica song.
Fourth on the list.
Oh, look at that. See, Ian's ready. I mean, this song right here, like, the build up, and then
our sister station is 102.9 The Buzz. We are loaded with the Metallica.
Yeah, we got all kinds of
Metallica, no problem
baby.
with that.
Yeah. So this is my number one song that I want to hear, and I think I have a good chance of it. Then I'm going to go Am I Evil, probably less of a chance. Disposable Heroes, yeah. Orion, again, I'm big on Master of Puppets. Battery, Leper Messiah, Damage Incorporated, that's all Master of Puppets, and I'm probably not going to hear. If I get one of those, I'll be excited. I'll take Four Horsemen. I'll take Creeping Death, and then Bread Fan. Those are my top 10.
No, For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Yeah, I like that song. That's fine. I mean, like anything that's and I didn't put anything on the Black Album on here. I mean, if we get Enter Sandman as the encore, that's fine.
It's probably what you're going to get.
That's fine. I love some Enter Sandman. I went with my brother, Virginia Tech game. We loved that. They're going to play Lane Stadium, by the way. This is Little Bread Fan right here, which is absolute jam. But I mean, again, I'm just basically sitting here bloviating about Metallica. I do, it's like Kaharski. Kaharski
would not like this rant.
Well, right, but he doesn't. He's like, all you do is you scream and you scream. Like, that's not true. They're a great rock band. Now, did they have a prime like most bands?
I now say you suck. Everyone sucks. Go go gaga. Suck, suck, suck. It's not like the boss. When the boss plays a Santa Claus coming to town, that is so wonderful.
You know,
Clarence hits those notes.
I did not mean to turn this into a Kaharski roast. But like every band, everybody has a prime when you make great music, and then a lot of bands continue to make music. You know what? They're going to play some of their new stuff. It's fine. I'll keep an open mind. But let's keep it to the good stuff for the most part, and let me show my teenage son what good music is.
I like Metallica. You know what I don't like? Bruce Springsteen's awful.
No, he's not.
Terrible.
Oh, no, he's not terrible. But
he's not quite Beatles bad, but he's terrible.
Okay. We don't need to. This is
You're
a wonderful.
100% incorrect.
This is a joyful rant about a band that's good. We don't need your bad Beatles and takes. I didn't realize that you totally hate Bruce. You totally hate
He's horrendous. He's horrendous. It's really bad.
Oh, God. Well, I don't know.
None of these people
I have
have
experience
anything.
with hand motions.
None of these people have anything on Blink-182.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And by the way, Pantera is opening tonight, which I'm excited to see them for the first time in my life. Now, that's a mosh up band. I'm a little afraid of some of the people who will be at the Pantera concert if they're just there for Pantera. But that should be pretty good.
Exclusively Pantera.
Yeah.
That's all I'm here
That
for.
happens though. That does happen. Like we went to the Chili Peppers and there were some people there that were totally there just for the Strokes. I love them both. And then it was just like, yeah, Chili Peppers, whatever, you know. Like some people
Did
show up
they
for the opening
leave?
band. I mean, they might have actually. They certainly were just like, they're like, oh, going nuts about the Strokes. And then it was like, you know, when the Red Hot Chili Peppers came. It happens.
615-737-1025.
What a great rant.
Our phone number, Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports will be with us coming up next. We'll get into the Titans, the NFL draft, all things NFL with them. I'm sure the Bill Belichick situation will come up as well. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ian Safar here with you on this Thursday morning. We head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in our buddy Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports. Charles, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, gents. How you doing this morning?
Doing awesome. Are you familiar with the, what was it, the Ionia?
Yeah, Ionia Free Fair. The free fair.
Ionia Free Fair, baby. Yeah, absolutely. You can't grow up in Michigan and not know about the Ionia Free Fair. I heard Joe's take on it. I'm surprised that Joe was shocked that Metallica played there. I think the Ionia Free Fair has actually drawn some huge acts over the years. Like it's a.
I mean, I'm not saying it's not a great fair. It's a great fair. We all agree. Okay. But yeah, it was kind of random. Like, wait, Metallica's playing the Ionia Free Fair this summer? Okay.
Yeah. There you go. Childhood core memory of Joe Rexrode.
Yeah. Let's call it childhood.
Yeah.
I'm being generous.
Very generous. So, Charles, we were discussing kind of the situation that Brian Callahan finds himself in now with Cam Ward being the number 1 overall pick. Obviously, things went very poorly last year. And, he had some glowing things to say about Will Levis heading into the season, and then it very quickly turned into a disaster. So what do you make of kind of where Callahan stands and whether or not, part of the evaluation is going to be here from the Titans standpoint, is he the right guy to lead the organization and develop what they think they have in Cam Ward?
Right. Well, look, there's two. I'll give you two. I'll give you one story about, kind of like Callahan Levis, and then I'll give you another story about Callahan Ward, and through sort of things I've seen unfold in other teams. And the thing with Callahan and Levis, and I think I've probably brought this up on the show in the past, but it is a memory that I go back to repeatedly over and over again with quarterbacks, because it's probably the truest thing I ever heard. A couple of years ago, I'm sitting with Kyle Shanahan. We're talking, and we're talking about Purdy, and I'm like, I was telling Shanahan, I'm like, I don't get it. Like, I'm still sitting here asking people the question about quarterbacks, like how you find a good quarterback. It's one of the first questions I asked when I started covering the NFL, 24 years before. And I asked Kyle, I'm like, why is this like this? Why can't we? It's been years and years and, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars over decades poured into refining this process and understanding it. And yet people still make huge mistakes. And I was having the conversation with Shanahan in the context of Purdy was playing great. And I could tell, I had just been to practice, and I could tell Trey Lance was gone. I'm like, this guy's gone. He's not going to be here by the time the regular season starts. And he actually, he got dealt to the Cowboys a couple of days after I, sat there with Shanahan. And Shanahan said to me, he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, and I think I've said this before on the show. He talked about all the things you do to get it right. He's like, all the film work you go through, all the character work you go through, the personal interviews, the one-on-ones, the private workouts. He said, then you draft the kid, you bring him in, you get your hands on him, you throw everything at him, you work with him on mechanics, you work with him on the whiteboard, you throw complexity at him, you challenge him, you support him, you do all these things. And he said, and you think you have it, you've got it exactly where it needs to be. And then he basically said the terrifying thing is you have no idea if it's going to go right at all until he walks onto a field and plays a game, a real game. And he's like, that's the simple fact. That's it. He said, no matter, you can do every single thing right. You can feel a certain way. He can have everything going for him. And then you can watch him walk onto the field and, and utterly fail. And we were having the conversation in the context of Purdy, but I'm like, he's talking about Trey Lance right now. Like, this is what he's talking about. This is what he's explaining to me. By trying to explain why Purdy worked, he's explaining to me how Trey Lance failed. And there were very different, approaches for him. He didn't go in thinking Purdy was going to be great. He when they drafted Purdy and he came in, Shanahan said one of the first things he thought was, oh, he's bigger than I thought he was going to be. He's like, I thought he was more of a shrimpy player, and like all these those completely different approaches. And yet one guy went out there and Shanahan knew almost instantaneously whoa, okay, it's just completely different. The way he handles it, the pressure, the stress of it, the leadership aspect, all this, it clicked, and he could see it pretty quickly. And the other guy, it just failed immediately and deeply and consistently. So that's what I would say about Callahan and maybe how he looked at Levis. I think, and I talked to Bill last, training camp when I came through, we talked about Levis, and he imparted some of these stories about Levis to me. And I think he believed it. I do. I think he thought, hey, we got one here. Like, he's got the tools and he's got all these different things. But then Levis goes out on the field and you see what happens under pressure, under duress, without protection. And, you just see mistakes that are made. And the difference is it's now live. You walk down the field and there's zero wiggle room. Either you got it or you don't. So that is what I would say about Callahan and Levis, and how maybe a coach sees one thing and then it completely turns out not to be what they expected. The other thing I would say is last preseason, I'm going on a training camp tour, and the Jets had spent a joint practices with the Commanders. And I think I told you guys this story. I'm talking to a Jets source, and the first thing he says to me, starts raving about Jaden Daniels. And I'm like trying to talk to him about his team, and he won't shut up about Jaden Daniels. And he's just like this. He's like, the dude's a baller. He's like, it's unbelievable. It's amazing. Like, he's so good. And he's just going on and on and on about it. But then he said to me, he's going to get killed there, though. The offensive line's terrible. They're not going to be able to protect him. He's going to get hammered. He'll probably be hurt by the end of the season. And then Daniels walks out there and the season starts, and he was the element that lifted that offensive line. Now, they played, I think, a little over their heads in terms of what was expected, but he raised those boats through his ability to compensate as an athlete, as a quarterback, to understand what was in front of him. He had it, and you could see it very quickly. And I watched him when I went in. They played his first preseason game, and he audibled, like the Commanders had been telling him, we're going to run super basic. We're literally starting a guard at tackle this game who's like a backup guard. We don't want to get you hurt. Just run what we send in. He's like, okay. They send in a screen to Eckler or something in the flat to Eckler. And Jaden Daniels is on the field, and he just decides, you know what? I see a setup here. I see something in the defense. I'm going to throw a go ball to a De'Ami Brown, right? And he's not supposed to. So he calls, like, he audibles into it, and like the players are like, uh-oh, like, he's not supposed to be doing this. And on the sidelines, they're going nuts. They're freaking out because they're like, we told you not to do this. What are you doing? Throws a 40-yard, beautiful 40-yard pitch and catch to De'Ami Brown. Dan Quinn's going nuts. He's screaming at him from the sidelines. Cliff Kingsbury's yelling at him like he's in trouble, and Jaden Daniels just looks at the sideline and he smiles. And like, all the players are like, yeah, this dude's got it. They're like, we understand he wasn't supposed to do that. That's kind of crazy. But he showed them something in that moment. And I think it's that indefinable sort of it quality of like your mentality, how you handle things, how you, afterward, Dan Quinn kind of laughed about it. He called it the Top Gun buzz the tower moment. Like, he does not have clearance to buzz the tower, and he did it anyway. And, so I think when you look at Ward, that's what you're going to find out. Like, it's all about, does he have the ability to step on the field and bring that it quality to his performance that meets or exceeds what their expectations are of him. And again, I keep looking back at Shanahan, and I believe this. You don't know until he goes out there, the same way the Commanders didn't know until Jaden Daniels got out there on the field. They did not know he was going to be as good as he was last year until he got out there and started to showcase it.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are great anecdotes. And yeah, I know it. And people, I think at this point, we should all be able to embrace that, right? That, like, look at how many failures there have been. Look how many out of nowhere success stories there have been. Clearly, all the homework, all the data, all the film, like, it's still like, okay, well, here we go. Push the baby on the carpet and see what happens.
Joe, how did everybody miss on Purdy that badly? Like, I mean, seriously,
he was really good in college too. He's a very good college quarterback.
He was a very good college quarterback. And even Shanahan said that a year later he was studying Clemson players on tape. and he pulled up an Iowa State Clemson game, and he said he felt stupid because he was watching it and he was like, why didn't I see this on Purdy? Like, he was like, I was seeing things trying to watch Clemson tape. I kept staring at Purdy. He said, I was seeing things that I saw him translate to the NFL level, like intangible things. And he's like, and it just didn't even though they drafted him, that never stuck with him. It never resonated with him in the process of, getting to the point where they and I don't think it's not like they did like a super deep dive on Brock Purdy either. Let's be fair, but he was like, I'm sure I saw that tape and it did not stick out to me the way it did a year later. And the only reason it stuck out to him a year or two later was because he'd seen Purdy do it on the NFL level, and then he goes back and looks at his tape. He's like, man, he was doing this in college. I just didn't pay close enough attention. He missed. That was it. And they got lucky, and they drafted him last in the last pick in the draft, and he saved their butts. And but that's why it's why it works for some guys and it doesn't work for others. We've covered this league long enough where we see physically gifted guys, and we're like, that guy's going to hit. He is going to be a superstar. And then they just don't. They just don't have. Carson Wentz, another one. I mean, if you took the top 25 NFL plays that Carson Wentz has ever put together, you would watch him and be like, oh my God, he's as good as any quarterback in the league. But the problem is you take his bottom 25 plays and there's some of the worst things you've ever seen a player do. Like it's literally, and that's it. That's I remember when Mahomes was coming out of Texas Tech, and I remember he signed with Lee Steinberg. And so I started kind of poking around and, kind of asking like, how good is Mahomes? I'd seen some of the college stuff or whatever. And I remember guys telling me like, yeah, he's got a huge arm. He kind of does stupid stuff though. He'll make some stupid throws. Like he way overcompensates for his arm, sometimes. Like, it's a cannon, but man, that guy will stick balls in places where you're just like, dude, what are you doing? Like some of the hero ball stuff. You same thing with Cam Ward, right? Really good arm, not as good as Mahomes, but he's got a really good arm.
Charles just compared Ward and Mahomes.
There we go.
There we go. Great. Please, someone aggregate that. But like, he'll make some of those throws where guys are like, "Yeesh, man, like, come on, like, what are you doing? You can't. Every play does not have to be a victory. Like, it's okay, But I heard the same thing, about Mahomes too, and so it's sort of like, until you watch the guy walk out there and do it for real, in a game, you're probably not really going to fully know or understand whether or not he has it. That's just the reality of the quarterback position. It stinks, but it's been like that forever. And, that's just, you got to kind of go through it. I'm excited for Titans fans. I'm glad they made this pick. We talked about this last week. Like, there was clearly a shelf between he and Shedeur. I didn't realize the shelf was as vast as it ended up being. But
it's a canyon.
Yeah, I mean, this to me was this is it. You if you're gonna swing an upside, and this is it. This is the upside swing. Like, if I'm sitting there going, all right, I'm in the AFC and I got to compete. If I'm gonna make the playoffs, I got to compete with, how many Hall of Fame quarterbacks are in the AFC right now. I got to get a guy who's got a ceiling, and this guy's got the ceiling.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Shedeur, because I was going to go there next. And speaking of film and evaluation, I'm sticking with, I think he's good. I think he was a real NFL prospect who's probably a fringe first rounder who obviously we saw what happened to him. So, Charles, do you think that there's any culpability in terms of how he was covered leading into the draft?
No. Are you going to do the media thing? Is the mock draft?
I'm just asking the question.
No, it's a bunch of garbage. This is part of the problem we have with Shedeur and frankly Deion. Like, it's always somebody else's fault. Like, somebody else did this. Somebody, it's the media built him up, and that's when he really wasn't this, and it was the mock drafters, and it was everybody on the grift, and they did the kid wrong, and that's why. And then, he's getting first and foremost, before the draft, like, I hit up 10 teams, right? At that time, 9 out of the 10 told me they believed he would be taken in the first round. They didn't necessarily have first round grades on him, but they believed he'd be taken in the first round because there were multiple teams that had significant need at quarterback. And they were, frankly, not always the most well-run franchises. And those are the franchises that take risks And if Shedeur was going to be a risk, he's probably going to get, the team that bites is going to be a team that historically has taken some bad gambles. And yet, he goes into the second round. And then at that point, I'm texting guys. I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, okay, look, the real evaluation on him, the real grade on him, the athletic profile, all these different things. He's not a first round quarterback. Then once he gets into the second round, where does he fit in the second round? Even the critics are like, yeah, probably late second, maybe even early third. Those are the critics. Late second, probably, late second, maybe early third. Once he fell out of the second round and then the third round, I called a former GM who had spent the last 2 seasons scouting him and had scouted him the last 2 seasons. And I said, and he was a big critic of Shedeur. And I said, what's going on here? I'm like, I know you'll give me the honest truth because you've been a critic all along. And he was like, look, fall out of the third feels personal. Like, he was like, at this point, he said he was shocked. He was like, I think at this point it feels personal. So what it looks like unfolded was the talent, the profile, what he was as a football player was not a first round quarterback. And then once you get past the second round and you get into the third round and beyond, then it's how you handled the process. And it wasn't mock drafters. It wasn't, Deion was out there telling everybody, my kid's a top 10 pick. He made statements about pulling, Eli Manning, all these different things. There were teams, there's a lot of very respected ex-NFL employees who do mock drafts who had Shedeur, if not in the first round, in the second round. I mean, definitely did not see him falling the way he fell. So look, you have to blame him where I think it's appropriate. When you get past what you are as an athletic athlete, when you get past what your evaluation is as a quarterback, and then you start going later and later and later, you did something in the process to cause that to happen. And on the tail end of it, we're finding out he was taken off some boards. And I think, frankly, if we could report it, there would be some boards that would shock you that he was taken off of. And I think it happened because of the experiences that these teams ultimately had with him. All that stuff, the visceral comments that Tom Pelissero reports and we go crazy, turned out to be true. Like, it turned out to be true, like feelings. The feelings were true. Those were real. And that affected, I think, ultimately where he went in the draft. And I also don't like the fact that when he came off the board, look, the video snippet is what it is. The Browns did not look thrilled. I will agree that can be a matter of timing and when it shows up on TV or whatever. But when Andrew Berry got asked, did the owner influence this pick? Andrew went to Harvard, okay? Smart guy, bright guy, worked on Wall Street. I think is a pretty good evaluator. Definitely knows what he's doing, and he most certainly knows the economy of language. All he had to say was no. Instead, he said, Jimmy lets us do our jobs. That's 5 words too many. Could have said 1 word. No. Did the owner influence this pick? I went to Harvard. No. Jimmy lets us do our jobs. That's not
Jimmy's a super guy. Have I ever told you about what a great guy Jimmy is?
It's not that's just not an answer. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, also you're a smart guy. Now you have 5 quarterbacks, one of which you're going to end up putting on season-ending injured reserve. Okay, so now you're down to 4 quarterbacks. One guy's Joe Flacco, who you can't cut because he's the most experienced guy in the room. 2 of them are your rookies, a 3rd rounder and a 5th rounder, which is just wonky in and of itself. And then the other guy, Kenny Pickett, you just traded for. You're going to carry 4 quarterbacks? You're going to carry 4 quarterbacks into the season. I guess because you have to now, because you took, Shedeur in the 5th. And you can't answer that the owner didn't influence the pick. So it was quite the saga, man. Like, it was just, and again, I think there's some culpability on Deion Sanders' end for this, because
I think way more than people are giving credit for.
Absolutely, because Deion told that kid over and over and over again, you're a top 10 pick, you're maybe a number 1 overall pick, you're this, you're that. And if you're Shedeur and you hear that enough from your dad, who you trust and believe in and who's coached you basically the entirety of your high level football, your entire lifespan, you're like, okay, I'm a top 10 pick. And then when you go through the process, what do you do when you get a team near the bottom of the 1st round that wants to talk to you in a private visit? do you take that as seriously as you need to? Or do you sit there and go, yeah, there's maybe 2 or 3 places I want to play. Everybody else,
Yeah, but there's still no excuse for not taking it seriously and not being a pro. I mean, right? That's why I start to shift it to him.
Absolutely, 100%. And it's, by the way, and I want to be very fair to that kid. He wouldn't have been the first kid to do that at all. Okay. Like I told you a story in the past about, there was a quarterback that went extremely high in a draft. He went on a draft visit with a team, literally a private visit with a team, goes to the facility, and he's like, I'm not going to be on board for these guys. So the way he handled that was he gets put into a meeting with the offensive coordinator and the quarterback's coach in one of their classrooms. The guy who's leading him around the building, showing him around and responsible for making sure he's on time for every single meeting, all of a sudden that guy starts getting text messages from the quarterback going, so what's going on next? And it was like 15 minutes after he walked into the room, this classroom with the OC and the quarterback's coach. So this guy's like, wow, the meeting's over already? So he walks down to the room.
Can we do lunch now?
He pokes his head in the room. The coach, the OC and the quarterback's coach are up on the whiteboard and they're working on installs. And the player is not even paying attention. He's on his phone texting. He's like completely blowing it off.
See, now this is a generational conversation.
This is
TikTok.
He's not part of this. This is a few years ago. Okay. So, I mean, I'll put it this way. It's in the last 6 years, 7 years. Like,
God, I was hoping it was Johnny Manziel.
So, but yeah, I mean, this is a train wreck, but don't miss me with the media stuff. Miss me with he was a victim of the mock drafts. I'm like, we're going to blame the mock drafts for this. Really? We're going to blame the mock draft.
And collusion too.
There's that too.
And then that whole garbage nonsense. Like, to me, as he fell and that stuff started to happen, and it was a fall, by the way, we can go ahead and say it. It was a slide. He's not a fifth. His talent is better than the 5th round. So we can go ahead and go, it wasn't a slide. The board told the truth. No, it didn't this time. But when that happened, and then you said, and you brought up Stephen A. Smith and what he said about, I think he brought up Kaepernick, right? And and I'm sitting there and I'm like, what's happening now makes the kid less draftable than ever, because now he's falling and he's not someone you're going to select to be a starter for you. He's not, once he gets past a certain point, you're not picking him and then having him walk in the building and saying, hey, it's an open competition for the starting quarterback job. No, now you're drafting him as just like a developmental piece on your roster, right? He might not even be your number 2 quarterback. He might be your number 3 quarterback. You want to draft that guy now that you see how the public reacts to the fact that he's experiencing some pretty terrible adversity. Like, the prank call sucked. Like, that was unnecessary. I'm glad he got fined for it, because, at some point, your kid's going to have to learn. It's a terrible way to learn. But don't do stupid stuff, and don't film yourself doing stupid stuff. But that was terrible. But this is just all the stuff around him. And I would argue that's why it went the way it went, because this is so much extra stuff, and the juice is not worth the squeeze. He's not a top 10. If he's a top 10 quarterback, then fine. If he's a top 10 pick, then fine. You will deal with this crap. If you feel like he's got the talent to be a top 10, pick, you'll deal with all the extra. That was not the case here. And he blew the pre-draft process, and his dad is who he is, and it was literally everything that could have went wrong. And it was just the highest profile slide. But now it doesn't matter. I mean, that's the thing. And in his defense, I'll say this. I feel like he's been pitch perfect all the way through. I feel like he's said everything that he needed. I could do without the legendary stuff. Stop saying legendary. But he has reacted to this in a way that makes me think maybe he'll make it. Maybe. Like, 5th round quarterbacks don't make it. Maybe he will, because in the face of everything that's happened, he never blew a gasket. He never did anything stupid. He said only good things, like all the stuff he said to the local beat writers about coming in and, hey, getting to know the veterans and supporting the veterans and, just getting his feet on him. I was like, okay, he's handling it about as well as he possibly could. And I actually thought maybe it'll be good for him to get away from Deion. Maybe it'll be good for him to go off on his own and be coached by someone else and be responsible for himself in a way that it's not constantly connected to his dad. Yeah, those are 2 long segments.
No, that's good. Charles, last thing for you here, very quickly. Your thoughts on the Bill Belichick situation.
Speaking of bleep shows,
that continues to be in the news cycle.
Yeah, I actually wrote about this today. I wrote it last night for today. Look, the way I absorb this, is if Bill is going to get another NFL shot, and this is exactly what I wrote, there's way more to squeeze through the door now than there used to be. This is Bill had a lot of baggage coming out of New England, but it was all football baggage, right? It was all ego related baggage with the owner, the quarterback, or this or that, but it was all football. It was still football, lived in the context of that world. He now, with what's going on with this relationship, and look, the age difference, all that stuff, whatever. I mean, it is what it is. People can have their opinions and make the jokes and all this stuff. I mean, I'm just whatever. It is, I don't care about that. What I care about is that since he's gotten to UNC, I've heard more about his personal life and I've seen more about his personal life than anything I know about UNC football, than anything I know about what he's doing there to build a program. And also, I think a lot of it is invited. It's invited by his girlfriend, who, has been very public about here's all these pictures of us, here are these things we're doing, things she's saying, all these different things. That's fine. I mean, your relationship's your relationship. But when you're an NFL team and you've passed on Bill because of football baggage for two off seasons, and then now you might reconsider him again, it's not just football stuff. Now you're what is this? What is all this stuff? This is a whole other side of Belichick no one ever had to really think about much. And, he had some things here and there that would pop up with his relationships that would become fodder for Page 6 and all that, TMZ, but not like this, not on this level. And I think that's, to me, the takeaway from what's going on right now. When I stare at it from an NFL perspective, I think teams are man, it's a lot. It's a lot, and it's a lot in ways that we are very unfamiliar with when it has come to Bill Belichick. Now, if he kills it at North Carolina, I mean, if he turns them into a national title contender in 1 year, which would be a miracle, if he does that, it'll forgive some things, it'll then maybe Bill coaching your team at 74 years old in 2026 becomes a little more tenable than, yeah, he's still a really good coach, but he's 74 years old. There's this other thing. People are so infatuated with gawking at it. It's not going to go away. And it's a very public, part of his life now that everybody talks about. As I said, this seems like a distraction. The old Bill didn't like distractions. This new Bill, I don't know. This is something different.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Charles, great stuff, man. Really appreciate you taking time to be with us today, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Have a good day.
Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. We'll react to what Charles had to say coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Got some tickets to give away to see Shinedown at Bridgestone Arena on Saturday, May 10th. Be caller number 3, 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Rexrode's feeling it today on the Metallica front.
Got to play this tonight, guys. The problem with 2 shows, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what are they saving for the Saturday show?
You going to go to both?
No, I don't think I will. I have a party Saturday.
I know.
But I'm excited about the party. And at the party, got some Rubik's Groove. So I'm excited about that.
That's pretty good.
It's a little bit different vibe than Metallica.
A little bit.
Yes. But now this is the night. Play all your stuff that I love tonight. On Saturday, play all your new songs. Anything since 1990, play all those songs. And what else? I mean, honestly, I like all their old stuff. So, but yeah, play all the new stuff, some experimental stuff, little experimental jazz.
Maybe they're coming out with a new album.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think, do they have a new album?
I don't know. Maybe they're planning on releasing one.
Here's some stuff from my new album. That's what all we're doing Saturday night. Tonight, play the awesome stuff.
Yeah. Interesting to get Charles' thoughts on a couple different things there. As you brought up during the break, it looks like he is Team Robbie Stanley on the that was a Jimmy Haslam pick that the Browns made in the 5th round with Shedeur Sanders. So that was interesting to hear.
Yeah, that was the saddest looking bunch I've ever seen after a pick as they clapped.
Oh, God. Way to go, guys. Nice pick.
What if there was someone coming up that they all agreed on, they couldn't believe was there. They were about to take that pick, and then Jimmy buzzes in. Nope.
Hey, guys, need you to take Shedeur Sanders here. Thank you.
Shedeur time.
Very interesting.
I mean,
works out.
It's insane that they took, first of all, that they took Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd at all.
Yeah.
But that they then took Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur in the 3rd and the 5th. It is really quite something. What an organization.
And now, I mean, it's a good question. Are they going to carry 4 quarterbacks? I don't know. I feel like you have to either move somebody or maybe you do have to cut Flacco and you just go, maybe Kenny Pickett's the veteran in the room after that. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting to see the way that they view that. But carrying 4 quarterbacks in this league is not what you want to be doing.
It won't happen. And honestly, I agree with Charles in terms of how he's handled it since. He's handled it publicly very well. And look, I've already made the prediction. I'll reiterate it. He will start games for the Cleveland Browns this year. Shedeur Sanders.
We'll see how that goes. Interesting piece from Charles at Yahoo Sports Today on the Belichick front, the title of which reads, "If a new NFL door opens for Bill Belichick, there's suddenly a lot of non-football drama to squeeze through it." And what he brought up at the end there, the last segment, is absolutely true. Like, I do feel like the old Belichick despised all things drama and despised all things distraction. And this is a whole lot of both that he's bringing to the table at North Carolina right now. A whole lot of both.
Yeah, it's a complete departure from what we all thought about him. Yeah, the main thing. Charles wrote that. It's a good column he wrote about it. And another thing in that column that really struck me, and I know it was mentioned in the interview with CBS, but just think about this for a minute. You're Bill Belichick. You're writing a memoir, and so everybody wants to know about. Obviously, they want to know about, especially the Patriots dynasty and all that went into it. And you don't mention Robert Kraft in your book. So to me, like you're just being disingenuous right from the jump in terms of, here, let me tell you my story. But I'm so mad at Robert Kraft, I'm going to pretend he wasn't a huge part of your story.
Right.
That's really lame.
Yeah.
It really is. There's a lot of stuff.
Well, and also just the fact that he's doing basically like a media tour for his book. Like, he would never do that.
Yeah.
Well, now, times change and priorities change and all that. I get all that. And, he is now at the end of his Patriots career. So there's a lot that's different. So I understand all that, but a lot about this feels like so anti-Belichick, the way that it's gone down.
Completely. And I mean, then there's all the stuff here. What's it mean for North Carolina football? I mean, like Charles said, we don't hear about anything. It was Bill's idea per, some coworkers of mine wrote about this story, The Athletic, about the documentary. And it was Bill's idea per the emails that they obtained, like, to do this whole thing, this Hard Knocks thing. He wanted to do it. And I think it's smart. Let's get these camera crews and let's get as much excitement going about North Carolina football as possible. So his idea, they're going to come in, all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, abruptly, it's all happening. They're talking about the cameras. All this stuff is happening. Then abruptly, nope, it's not happening. Why?
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious why. And it's like, if that's how you're going to let this person dictate things and storm away and then forget about it at the detriment of an idea you had that actually would have been good for your program, you might be screwed.
WB in Thompson Station says, how can you possibly question an organization like the Browns when the Titans are the worst and ours will not get any better because Amy's never going to let go of the franchise?
So you can't, nobody else can be bad
on anyone else.
Two things can't be true. Only the Titans can be bad. Because we never talk about how the Titans are bad.
Yeah.
We don't touch that one. Oh, hold on now. Everything's fine. All is well, everybody.
Don't have any thoughts on Amy and the way that's gone.
Yeah, no. It's all good. It's all fine. Everything's going well. Yeah, look.
And by the way, the Browns have sucked for 30 years. So there is also that.
Yeah, the Browns have a pretty special track record of incompetence. So sorry. We're sorry to mention it. We'll get back to a regularly scheduled program of telling you why everything's awesome with the Titans.
615-737-1025. Our phone number, 615-737-1025. More to get to on the text line, reacting to Charles Robinson coming up next. Join Big Joe on 1025 The Game from 10 a.m. to noon at Coleman Tractor of Nashville this Saturday for Kubota Orange Days. There'll be exclusive deals on compact tractors, zero turns, and more with special financing available. The sale runs from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. with demos, deals, giveaways, and lunch that'll be served from 11 to 1. That's at Coleman Tractor of Nashville, located at 7221 Whites Creek Pike in Jolton, coming up this Saturday. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game. Robby and Rexrode live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025, our phone number. 615-737-1025. It was interesting to hear Charles go through the quarterback part of this. You know, he's told the Jaden Daniels story before in terms of kind of the play he made there early in the preseason that got the coaches talking and the players talking a little bit. Man, this guy, he could be the guy. You know, the Purdy stuff is also interesting because you do watch a guy like that come in the NFL and you think, how did everyone miss? Like, how did you all miss until he was the very last pick in the draft and he came in and immediately found a way to be a good player in this league? We're going to find out with Cam Ward. We spent a lot of time talking about Cam Ward, Brian Callahan today. And, you know, if you're a Titans fan listening to our conversation, I think you feel better after listening to Charles, because basically Charles was just like, yeah, you know, you can do a lot of things. You can do all the right things. You can put them through every test. You can evaluate every piece of film you want to. But at the end of the day, it basically just comes down to throwing him on the field and hoping it works out for you. And that's what we're going to find out with Cam Ward.
Yeah. Now, I've seen some other, you know, takes it go almost too far the other way, which is like no one has any idea. There's no point even evaluating them. It's just like, you know, I mean, people do get it right. They don't get it right at a high rate, but they do get it right.
Yep.
There are some things that we've all seen in college football that we thought would happen that did happen at the position, right?
Sure.
I mean, I was watching Joe Burrow in his last year, and yes, he was surrounded by absurd amounts of talent. One of the most talented teams in college football history, in my opinion.
Yep.
But still, yeah, I think he's going to be good. Well, there you go.
Andrew Luck, you knew pretty
there
well.
There you go.
He knew pretty
Luck's
well.
a great example.
Yeah.
You know, Trevor Lawrence, it hasn't gone there. So who is that? Him? Is that that? What, you know, that's where there are way more stories like that. And the Mahomes, it is funny. You know, Mahomes coming up, and there's another example Charles gave us of all the people saying, "Oh man, yeah, big arm, but and all that stuff." I will say, through all this has been a hell of a week of ripping Mel Kiper. You know, ESPN, of course, you know, put together like his greatest hits, and they ran them all together. And a lot, you know, and of course, Mel Kiper has tons of good ones and tons of bad ones, just like anybody who tries to evaluate this. But his stuff on Mahomes was good. It was like, these people talking about a system. I can't do Mel Kiper at all.
Todd.
There you go. Thank you.
That's one of my favorite clips ever.
But he was dead on. Like, you people are overthinking this. This guy's going to be great, you know? And because there was so little buzz about Patrick Mahomes going in that draft. I understand he went 10th. He was not talked about. He was not one of the quarterbacks.
No.
It was just like, yeah, really talented, but it's offense, you know, and it's here we go. So, and now we're getting the comparisons to Cam Ward. But I get it, because the extending plays, which Cam Ward is very good at, not a good runner, but extending plays and then making ridiculous throws, he definitely does.
Well, and that philosophy is interesting that Charles has brought up a couple of times with us now, which is, hey, man, if you're going to try to compete with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and all those guys in the AFC, you're going to need a dynamic quarterback to do it. So, look, maybe you take a risk and the guy busts and you're right back to square one again at some point. That may end up being the most likely outcome here. But what if the guy hits? Like, what if Ward hits and he's right there with those guys? Ultimately, that's probably – I mean, those guys ain't going anywhere. That's what you're going to need in the AFC.
Yeah. Now, you could still beat them with a great team with a different kind of QB, but I get it. I think it makes sense. We've decided Cam Ward's going to be amazing today.
We have.
Good show.
Good stuff. Enjoy Metallica tonight.
Oh, I will.
We'll be back 6 a.m. tomorrow. Rexrode, we'll see.
I'll be in great shape tomorrow.
Jason Big Joe is coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3, The Game.